Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I used to introduce Eli Lake every single Friday as the host of the Breaking History podcast and a contributor to the Free Press. He's still the host of the Breaking History podcast, but I think he works for CBS now. I'm not sure. Eli, do we know yet?
I don't want to say anything because I think that some of the reporting has been correct, but I'm not involved in any of the negotiations or anything, so I don't want to.
Well, please keep doing Breaking History, even if you go over and it becomes the Tiffany Network's Breaking History. I must say, the latest episode on James Jesus Angleton is fabulous. But I'm already a Kim Philby nut, and I'm an Alger Hiss nut, and I know about. Have you ever read Dan Silva's novels? Danny Silva wrote a book called The Other Woman, which is all about. Kim Philby
I haven't read Dan
Silva.
I've read Le Carre and I've read Graham Greene, and for this episode, I read a great Norman Mailer novel called Harlot's Ghost, which is all about a lot of these things. But I'll put Silva in my list because I love good spy novels.
Yeah, it's The Other Woman. I think it's his 2018 or 2019 book, and some people start at the beginning and go to the end, but it's not necessary for this purpose. When you are in the zone, the Philby Angleton zone, then you need to read that. Now, let me tell people, I find Russia to be incredibly easy. Comey, Brennan, and Clapper decided to take out Trump, and they cooked it up with the assistance, unwitting, of Hillary Clinton, and a little assist from Russia that didn't know what was going on. But boy, Eli, did you break it down with the audio from John Brennan and the back story from Angleton. Why don't you tell people about Angleton and how it matters to Russia?
Well, okay, so I want to say James Jesus Angleton is one of the most, I think, brilliant figures in American 20th century history. He's somebody who, if he had not gone into espionage, would have been, I think, a literary critic or an editor of sorts, because his first love was poetry, and he used the sort of tools of literary criticism as somebody who, tried to decipher the true meanings of, foreign agents and so forth. And so that's where he, that's where he comes from. And what Angleton really was is he invented the counterintelligence executive for the CIA. That's the heart of any intelligence service. And his very close friend, Kim Philby, in my view, was probably the most successful trader, at least of modern times. And it was a crushing blow when he finally learned that his dear friend and collaborator, and they had worked together in World War II against the Nazis. In many ways, Angleton learned the craft and the dark arts of intelligence from Philby. Was a Soviet agent all these years, and I think that made him somebody who didn't trust anything around him. And it was sort of the opposite of credulity. He didn't believe anything. And as a result, he did great damage searching for a phantom mole inside the CIA. The CIA had, I think, a reliable defector in Yuri Nosenko, who told them early on that the Soviets didn't have anything to do with the Lee Harvey Oswald coming back to the United States and eventually, sadly, assassinating John F. Kennedy. Angleton didn't believe it and had him effectively kind of detained and tortured, psychologically at least, for nearly 5 years. And it was, I think, in this period that Angleton came to believe that the Russians had an ability not just to do the standard stuff in the Cold War of spy versus spy, but to hack the consciousness of regular Americans. That is the underlying theory of Russiagate, that the Russian meddling in the 2016 election was responsible for electing Trump because it changed the minds of Americans. And I think that you and I would say that I think we both agree that, yes, the Russians did hacking and they did the leaking and they did, kind of, I think, feckless, but nonetheless, they did some social media manipulation, not as much as was originally claimed.
I would call it non-material interference. So they were there, they were screwing around. I don't think they affected the outcome of any electoral college votes. Do we agree?
I think that's right. And by the way, the Soviets and before the Russians, they do this. They've done this to other elections. They've been in an information war with what they consider the United States are their greatest adversary for at least 100 years. And that, to me, is very Angletonian. It's this idea that American citizens on their own can't kind of, separate the wheat from the chaff, separate the, lies from fiction, and will believe just about anything. It's an arrogant view. It's, by the way, it's the same kind of mentality that led to all of the excessive social media regulations in the COVID era. It's what led social media companies to lock out the account in the 2020 election of the New York Post because they accurately reported on Hunter Biden's liaisons with various foreign people trying to corrupt, his father when he was the vice president. So it is a pattern. It's this idea that we can't trust the American people to think for themselves. And that, in some ways, is the sort of conceit of Angleton after his career.
I agree with you, Eli, and you make the case brilliantly in the Breaking History episode. But here's my one pushback. I routinely ask new guests, was Al-Jarreas a communist spy? And they don't even know who he is. And
of course he was
that's kind of because
a communist spy. Absolutely.
Yes, he was. And he probably is the only guy in the running with Kim Philby for greatest traitor of the 20th century, because he was at FDR's elbow at Yalta. So who knows what he did to the weak and sickened FDR. But I just don't know that we can fix this. We just have to accept that the American public is not as literate as it was 25 years ago, especially people under 40.
Well, all right. I concede that I think people are reading less than they used to. But the answer to that is harder. See, I think that there is like a phony anti-disinformation industry that says we can fix this problem by having like NewsGuard. We're going to like check for fake news on everything on the internet and things like that. That's not the answer. The answer is you have to rethink how our education system works. You have to teach people things like media literacy, critical thinking. You have to go back to teaching the classics. You have to, take a page from Alan Bloom, go back to the idea of a canon. Teach people how to think. That's what we need to do, and that's something that we've lost in the last 50 years. And that's it's like a generational project, and you don't have an easy policy fix for it. So that's how I would respond.
People have to curate their intake. They have to. There's only so many hours in a day. You have to say, I'm going to listen to commentary and Breaking History and Hugh Hewitt and the Ruthless Podcast and Big Ben. I mean, you just got to curate your intake or you're going to be dumb as dirt. Yeah. Last word to you, Eli.
Well, I appreciate it. And I just have to say your show has been essential on the Israel stuff. I thought the Michael Oren interview, John Podhoretz, Aviv Redegor, just really essential stuff, kind of getting to the bare facts of it, especially as we're in the midst of another kind of information war against Israel. But, getting back to Russiagate, because I do think it resonates, because it was the first scandal of the Trump era, and in some ways it was sort of the first model of it. And that's why there's so much mistrust of all these institutions. To get it back requires a kind of reckoning of the other side. Andrew McCabe should no longer be on CNN. James Comey shouldn't be allowed to be teaching John Brennan, etc. There you go.
I want everyone to go and listen to this episode of Breaking History and follow Eli at Eli Lake on X. It's valuable. It is immunizing you against just terrible information. Stay tuned. I'll be right back.